A resume has become the #1 requirement employers request in today's job market. Before meeting you in person for an interview, they will probably want to meet you on paper first. How you impress that employer can and will make all the difference. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese. In today's video, I'm going to take you through how to write a resume and what the important things to include are. My working career has not really been that long. It's only been about 12 years. However, I have worked around about 6 jobs in different industries and have submitted over 50 resumes or 50 applications throughout that time. I, over the years, have been interviewed through many different avenues. Some of these include things like face-to-face, in front of a group of people or a panel, and over the phone. And all of these applications started with me submitting a resume, and in some instances a cover letter as well. I am quite proud of my resume. It's something that I have built upon since I was 14 years old, and it's now something that I'm quite confident in submitting to land myself a job interview. And for that exact reason, the example that I'm going to walk you through today is my personal resume with any personal information redacted. I've replaced any personal information with either X's, the letter X, or XYZs, or the word fake. Just note that if you don't have a lot of experience and you're like, oh, this might be really complex, it doesn't matter. This is going to give you an example of the layout and the type of content you want to put in there. Overall, even if you are inexperienced or you don't have a lot to put on there, you will still have things that fit in the categories I talk about today. Just note that this is what I would deem a fairly comprehensive resume, and yours may be smaller, but that's okay. There are plenty of important things you can add into it without having to have everything that's on mine. The size of your resume will depend on your time and experience in the workforce. Rule of thumb is to minimize any unnecessary information and compress the key points of your experience and put it onto that paper in a way that's short, sharp, and shiny. You're not writing a narrative, you're trying to get to the point, so if an employer was to skim over your resume, they would be able to see something like dot points that would perfectly explain all of your experience, your capabilities, and your skills. So with that out the way, here it is, a guide to building or fine-tuning your own resume. Let's get into it. My resume is 5 pages. Follow along to see how I lay it out. Starting on page 1, at the very top, you will want to detail the following: your full name, your date of birth, your address, your mobile number, and your email. After these personal details, you should consider inserting a paragraph which explains your current situation and your desire to obtain employment in that relevant field. My example is one to refer to, but let's say if you are a student, it might look something like this. I am working hard to complete my secondary schooling at school XYZ, name your school, and am eagerly looking to develop my communication and professional skills in retail. I am outcome driven, enjoy learning new skills and undertaking new challenges. That's all it has to be, nice and simple. Below this blurb, add your education qualifications, if applicable. My resume only includes my tertiary education, as I feel it is no longer necessary to include my high school education. Depending on where you are in your career, I recommend adding your most current education qualifications from the past 5 to 10 years. This may potentially be in the form of a trade qualification in this section here. And finally for this page, add any professional development or memberships you have completed or hold. This could include things like external or online courses, training certificates, diplomas, or professional memberships. Moving on to page 2 and 3. So this section of your resume is purposed for your employment history and your experience. Usually I would condense this to be just across 1 page, but I thought I would leave most examples of my previous employment in here to show you how I've structured my qualifications and experiences gained from each one. As seen, I list the date of employment in sequential order, the employer's title, and what my current role at that company or business was. Below, I dot point the skills and responsibilities I had at those employers. Note, for my most current employer, the end date in the date of employment section just says current, indicating that I still work for them. On top of that, at my current job, there is information I am unable to provide on my resume, so I add the sentence, I am happy to discuss the details about the program in an interview environment, to inform the hiring manager that I am able to go into further detail in an interview. Moving on to page 4, this section is all about your personality and who you are as a person. I like to detail my skills profile and relate them back to specific tasks I've completed at my place of work. This is a good thing to add to a resume because you should be able to relate these skills back to school experiences which can be extremely helpful for an application that lacks actual work experience, but includes some life experiences. I list my software and program competencies as they can be desirable to an employer and may push you over the edge during their selection process. And finally, I add some personal attributes and interests, as I am a human being who has regular hobbies and interests. The last page is for referees. I recommend having 3, and I would avoid putting family members as a reference at all costs. Your mum may love you, but realistically she isn't an appropriate reference to put on your resume. In this section, I try to keep the layout consistent across all 3 references in the following configuration. So I put their full name, their title or qualification, the role at their company that they work at, the company or business they work for, their company address, their contact phone number and email, and the relationship I had with them. In my case, all of my references were my managers. Before adding a referee to your resume, make sure you ask them if they would be willing to be a referee for you, and as a courtesy, when you start applying for jobs, let them know, as they may get a phone call from employers looking at your resume. Back when I was supervising at Foodland, I was a referee for many of the staff in the team. Now, from time to time, I would get caught off guard with a phone call from an employer who was looking for information or a reference from me for someone that I was a reference for. Opposed to people who told me in advance and allowed me to take the time to prepare and have some answers stilled away in the back of my head, I was definitely able to give better responses for the people who told me that they were applying for jobs and that I may be expecting a phone call than the people who didn't inform me at all. So keep that in mind as well when applying for jobs, to tell your referee that they may get a phone call from said employer. When distributing or uploading your resume digitally, make sure to save it as a PDF and submit it that way before sending it out. Using a PDF is better than using a Word document or a Google Docs document because they can be edited if you send them out, and they also can be large in file size. So most employers may not accept a Word format resume. In the near future, I may create a resume template for people to be able to download and just have access to at any time. Let me know in the comment section down below if that's something that you would be interested in, or feel free to email me on the email on the about page of my channel. The way that I have laid out my resume is just one way to go about doing it. When creating your own, make it your own. Make it about you, because that's what it has to be. But feel free to use mine as a guide. Overall, I hope you learned something in today's video about writing your resume and what important information you need to put on it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and as always, I will see you in the next one.